It took a long time to get pregnant in the first place, which was, it took years, and we had to go to a lot of doctors, and we eventually had to use IVF in vitro. But when we found out that we succeeded, that was really exciting, and that we were having twins was even more exciting. Pregnancy itself was pretty normal. It seemed like it was normal. And about 6 months in, I went in for a regular appointment, and within an hour I was at the hospital. And the plan was to keep me in the hospital for another 2 to 3 months until I reached at least 34 weeks, and then they would deliver at that point. But I only made it 5 days. Everything started in the middle of the night. By 9 a.m. I was having an emergency C-section, and they delivered Austin first, and then they delivered his brother. His name was Philip Noble. The doctors were sitting at the end of the bed, and they were saying things that I didn't understand, that they were having a hard time. I didn't understand that he was dying. And so then they brought him to me, and I understood. So they were only, this big. So I was holding this very, very tiny thing. He was moving, but he wasn't really breathing. He was somehow, his heart was beating for another hour, or about an hour after he was born. So I got to hold him, and he just wasn't alive anymore. His lungs just couldn't take it. His lungs had holes in them. It's called pneumothorax, and he had that in both lungs. Whenever there's going to be a premature birth, they give you steroid shots to try and do what they can to mature the lungs faster. And I did have those shots, but it wasn't enough for his lungs. His lungs just couldn't function. And Austin had a whole lot of trouble with his lungs, and he was intubated with oxygen for a lot longer than anybody hoped he would be. So that was one of his toughest complications as well. And one of the treatments they use is called surfactant, and that helps open up the lungs and that the lungs don't stick together. The March of Dimes research is what's behind the development of surfactant therapy. So it's one of the reasons I got involved. And just, there's a lot of stress in a NICU because of all the noise and everything going around and everybody checking on you and all these tubes and wires and antibiotics and all of that. So he has this little blue dog that my brother gave him the day he was born. And we found that if we put the dog on his head, his oxygen saturation would go up, his heart level would mellow out, and he would be fine. So it's this funny little stuffed blue dog that he still sleeps with every night to this day. It's his best buddy. And that dog, putting it on his head, calmed him down a lot of the time. So the joke was that he collected ologists the way some people collect stamps. Lots of doctors. Small for his age, and he had a really severe speech delay, but now he's very articulate, and he does really well in school, and he's curious about everything. I've run into people who have preemies, and they find out that he was a preemie, and they look at him and they're like, all right, there's hope. It's not just a statistic that, your kid will probably be okay if this is what a kid that went through all of those things looks like, and he's doing great. So it's a good thing, an amazing thing that he is who he is. I didn't know about the March of Dimes when I was pregnant. I didn't know about prematurity when I was pregnant. I figured prematurity was for drug addicts. That the people who had preemies did something wrong, So I did everything right, and it was really surprising when I all of a sudden had a preemie, and I learned through the March of Dimes and through the hospital that 50% of the time they don't know what causes prematurity. Actually, I do March of Dimes more in a way to honor and be connected to Austin's brother, and then Austin does it with me in honor of his brother. So, you know, it was something that I did personally that now my company does, which is really cool to have had that impact, because I just wanted to have some, you know, to raise some money, because some of the stuff that March of Dimes has done helped me. You know, you can say 1 in 8 babies is born prematurely, and birth defects are a leading cause of death, and infant mortality, and prematurity is a major cause of infant mortality, and you can say all of these things, but it doesn't always connect with people unless they hear somebody's own story. So I share my story.